Well, a couple of weeks ago, I was in Toulouse, France, filming for our 10-part Catholicism series. And I admit that I was there for a very personal reason, because St. Thomas Aquinas is buried at the Dominican Church of the Jacobins in Toulouse. And Thomas is my personal hero, really. When I was 14 years old, I went to Fenwick High School, a Dominican high school near Chicago. And one of the young priests taught us the arguments for God's existence from Thomas Aquinas. And I'm still not sure exactly why this happened, but it was like a bell went off in me. There was a sense I got of the reality of God, which I've never lost. And hearing those proofs many years ago set me on a path I've never really gotten off of. So when I was praying before the tomb of Aquinas, it was very much of a personal prayer of gratitude to him for the way he set a path for my life. It occurred to me that I'm a priest because of the grace of God. But that grace really, for me, came through Thomas Aquinas, so it was a privilege to thank him there in Toulouse. It also occurred to me that Thomas is such an important figure for our own time. You wonder, now, why would this 13th century theological master be so important for the 21st century? Three things came to my mind. There are many others, but three especially. The first one is, Thomas Aquinas saw with utter clarity that truth is one, since all truth finally comes from the one God, who is truth itself. Therefore, there can never be a conflict between the truths of science and the truths of faith. During his own time in the 13th century in Paris, where he taught, there was a group that advocated the double truth theory, which said, well, there are two sets of truths. There are religious truths and there are philosophical or scientific truths. And they might be at odds with each other. They might be in contradiction, but you have to sequester. One is philosophical, the other is religious, and they can exist, even contradictory truths, side by side. Well, Thomas Aquinas thought that was so much nonsense and said so, and made a very public case of it. I think this is very important for our time when we see in the minds of way too many people this conflict between faith and reason, between religion and science. Again, Thomas would say, if there is an apparent conflict between a clearly known scientific truth and a religious truth, either we're dealing with bad science or bad religion. We need to think more deeply and more creatively about what's at stake. He followed Augustine in saying this: if an interpretation of the Bible is opposed to what is clearly known through our scientific investigations, we should interpret the Bible in a more symbolic or a metaphorical way. In other words, he resisted the tendency to sequester these two truths into opposite categories. And I think that very Catholic understanding of Bible in relation to philosophy and science is very important for our own time. We as biblical people, following Thomas's intuition, reach out to the sciences. We reverence the sciences. We take with great seriousness what the sciences teach. And we don't see a conflict, finally, between religion and science. We also allow science to be disciplined by what we know to be the case from Revelation. These really deep truths that emerge out of Revelation cannot be contradicted by the sciences. So I think that sense of the unicity of truth is a great gift of Thomas for our time. Here's a second one. I know I've talked about it many times before on these YouTube forums, but Thomas Aquinas was very impressed by the fact that contingent things, that's to say, things that don't contain within themselves the reason for their own existence, exist. And that's a puzzle. That's a mystery. Contingent things like you and me, if we eat and drink, if we had parents, if we breathe air, we're contingent. We don't explain our own existence. Plants, trees, animals, human beings, the cosmos itself are contingent. Therefore, the fact that they exist needs to be explained, Aquinas intuited. Furthermore, an infinite appeal to other conditioned things, other contingent things, will never be adequate. It simply postpones the explanation. We must come, therefore, Aquinas saw, to some reality which exists through the power of its own essence. That's what Catholics call God. That's what he called God. And that's how he argued for God's existence on rational grounds. He was very moved by the coherence between that view of God and the self-revelation in Exodus 3:14. when Moses asked God for his name, and God said, I am who I am. I'm not a particular being. I'm not one contingent thing among many. I'm the sheer act of existence itself. Thomas saw that, and it was the rational ground for confirming God's existence. How important that is in this time now where the so-called new atheists have emerged with all this claptrap about how the sciences obviate belief in God. They do no such thing. The scientists talk about the relations that obtain among conditioned things. That's a very legitimate task. But it says nothing about the non-contingent ground of all existence. The scientists don't address the question of why there's something rather than nothing. Thomas saw that was the question. God is not a superstitious holdover from an ancient time. God is the answer to that eternally relevant question. That's important for our time. Third thing, Thomas Aquinas was a radical humanist because he was a Christian. Christians hold that God became human, that humans might become God. That's the old patristic adage. It means God became one of us, that we might become sharers in the divine life. That means there is no humanism higher than Christian humanism. There's no claim made about the human being from ancient times to modern times that is more extravagant and more extraordinary than the Christian claim, that we are meant for a share in the divine life. Now, the implication is each human person is irreducibly dignified. Each human person is the subject of an enormous God-given set of rights. Abortion, euthanasia, stem cell research, all those things that would reduce human beings to a means to an end are repugnant to this fundamental Christian claim about the dignity of the human being. Thomas Aquinas knew that, as all the great Christian theologians know, and that makes him, I think, extraordinarily relevant to our own time. And so going back to that tomb of Aquinas, I think of his bones are in that casket in Toulouse. But thank God his spirit and his mind live on provocatively in the life of the church now.